This Sunday, September 17th, Jazz Winnipeg will be presenting the first of their series of concerts at the Fort Garry Hotel. This is the first concert of the Jazz at the Fort Garry series for this 2023-24 season. The concerts on Sunday will feature the multi-Juno award-winning pianist David Braid. But what makes David Braid's performances here in Winnipeg so particularly special is that he will be giving two 60-minute shows with two completely different quartets. The first show is at 6:30 and features Carrie DeVores on violin, Kathy Wood on clarinet, Serkan Alagök on bassoon, and David Braid at the piano. The second show is at 8:30 and will feature Greg Gation on saxophone, Marika Galia on bass, Serkan Alagök this time on drums, and David Braid on piano. The two quartets will be performing Braid's own compositions that combine multinational folk melodies with jazz inspiration. These are going to be two absolutely fantastic shows. Joining me here over Zoom to talk about this Sunday night's concerts, I am joined by David Braid and bassoonist and drummer Serkan Alagök. Hey, David and Serkan, it's nice to have you here.
Hey, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So good to be here.
Mm-hmm. You've been in Manitoba all this week. You're in Brandon right now doing a residency at Brandon University. As a very proud BU alum, I have to ask, how have you been enjoying Brandon and how have you been enjoying Brandon University?
Well, I've been here now maybe 3 times over the past 20 years, and the feeling is always the same. I was discussing this a bit with Greg Gation yesterday, department head here and a longtime friend. It's Brandon in general, I find is very relaxed, missing of sort of city neuroses, if you know what I mean. And I think BU is kind of a seems to me to be the nucleus of this very relaxed, intelligent, calm, peaceful, cooperative environment here, and I feel that very much, having been to a lot of music faculties in different parts of the world. BU has always stood out as just being, it seems things just seem to work so well there, and it's quite amazing, especially for a place that's relatively isolated. It's isolated perhaps from some negative things, so it's preserved this really nice relaxed feeling, which I've always enjoyed.
And Serkan, how about you? How have you been enjoying Brandon University?
So far, great. I met with a lot of academic staff and bandmates from Brandon University. They are also professors there. They are so humble, so professional, and also incredible musicians. But in the meantime, they are really, really humble and such warm-hearted. I love the place and I love the teachers' music level. So far it's great. And also Brandon is a great city. I really love it. We went to great places and I enjoyed Eggs Benedict a lot here. Thanks to David.
Yeah, it's really special what they have out there. On Friday, you're going to be performing at Brandon University's Lauren Watson Recital Hall. And then on Sunday, you're going to be at the Fort Garry. And there are a number of BU faculty that are going to be joining you for these concerts. How did this partnership between BU and yourself come about, David? Did they approach you or did you approach them? How did it come together?
Well, I have Groundswell in Winnipeg to thank for this, because 2 or 3 years ago, they commissioned a piece for me, which I wrote called Stories from Central Asia and the Caucasus. It was for their nice concert series. And it was a piece for piano trio, piano, violin, and clarinet. And Maddie Hildebrand was playing piano, Carrie DeVores on violin, and Kathy Wood was playing the clarinet part. And it started this association between my music and their work, or their playing. And about a year later, an opportunity came up where it was 2022, which is the 30th anniversary year between Canada diplomatically with the countries of the former Soviet Union. So I had this opportunity to do this tour of presenting my music that's inspired by that region. So with much excitement, I invited Carrie, Kathy, and Maddie to join with myself and a musician from Europe, a cellist, and we did a tour playing some of the works that will be playing at the concert on Sunday. And so, of course, being on the road together and playing my music together and bonding and all of this, it sort of felt like we made a sort of musical family. And of course, I told them all about meeting Serkan on that trip. Part of that trip, I went alone to Turkey, and I mean, it goes without saying how rare it is to find a musician who's so well excellent at one thing, let alone two completely different instruments in two completely different styles. It's amazing, you know. And so I thought, wow, he's the perfect person to invite into like my musical world with the BU faculty, because my music is quite rhythmic, because it's informed by, you know, a significant background in jazz music. Serkan being a jazz drummer, he understands that, and allowing some of that rhythmical knowledge to speak through his instrument. So I've been amazed at how well my music has taken life now that I've rewritten the whole program, replacing the cello with bassoon. So there's no one on earth that would be better for this, I think, than Serkan to play it.
I'm getting shy. Thank you.
There's this wonderful phrase, this idea of multinational folk melody meeting jazz inspiration. David, I know one of the things that you've done before is combine jazz and classical music and created this wonderful fusion. How did the fusion of folk melodies with jazz come about, and where did you draw an inspiration for these compositions?
Sure. Well, the last a little less than 10 years, I suppose, I've been doing quite a lot of concertizing in areas which I guess you could connect by their association economically and politically with the Silk Road. And it's very fascinating, because spending time in those countries, you start to see how, you know, over 1,000 years ago, culture, art, food was traveling along these trade routes, and each country was taking it and interpreting it in their own way. So, and I've played with this thought experiment after visiting this amazing ancient instrument museum in Uzbekistan, where I was certain that what I was looking at was the DNA of Western classical music, in the sense of these prototypes of instruments which looked like the predecessors of some of our instruments. And whether that's true or not is not important, but for me, what was important was it was the thought experiment that in this cultural places that I was going, I was in touch with the DNA of Western art music. So what I started to do is collect the melodies and rhythms that I found very interesting, and I was sort of keeping a notebook of these, and it was just very natural that with a background in jazz, which is, you know, fundamentally informed by a rhythmical system, which I believe also influenced, you know, certainly North Africa was part of that trade route, and my interest and ultimate respect for Western classical musical art form, it seemed a very natural way to combine all these things together to form a new musical program. So the music that I'm presenting, for example, on Sunday, is two manifestations of that. One is a jazz manifestation where I'm playing some of those, well, actually a lot of those, in you know, arranged for a jazz quartet, and then in fact, some of the very same melodies in the second part, I have actually built classical compositions out of. So I think it'd be very interesting for the audience to hear the same types of melody twice, but two completely different renderings of them.
Yeah, takings on it. Yeah, one of the things I did when I was preparing for the interview was I saw a selection from the Dark Butterfly project on YouTube. And one of the things that it struck me was it reminded me actually a lot of Armenian music. Like it just had this sort of modal, you know, and very rhythmic, at least the selection I heard, that's what it had. Serkan, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to be playing in both of the quartets on Sunday night. And
Yeah,
in one quartet, you're playing bassoon, and the
yeah.
other quartet, you're playing drums. Uh, they're completely different instruments in my mind. How did you get drawn to drums and bassoon?
Yeah. Actually, I attended conservatory as a bassoon student at the age of 11. 2 or 3 years later, we decided to create a rock group with classmates. Some of classmates are playing electric guitars, some of them playing pianos, but
Mhm.
I was playing bassoon. So I tried a lot to keep up with them, but it didn't work really. And my uncle is also a very good drummer, and he's singing in state choir in Ankara. I asked him, can I play drums? Do I have a talent for that? He said, let's see, and give me a drum set and show me some grooves on it. And I practiced and practiced and practiced. Then it became a natural for me to practice drums every day. And it was like a meditation for me. Uh, and as I learning it better, I start to play with many groups and
Mhm.
start to earn money, and it develops my love to drums better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
After I started to play with orchestras, symphony orchestras on school, I started to love bassoon much more. So I said I cannot give up anything because I love classical music and I love jazz music. So I have to do both. Yeah. This
And
is
as
this.
a it's great. And as a player, what's it like to play David's music? I mean, you're playing bassoon in one quartet and drums in the other. Aside from the obvious technical switch ups that you have to do, is there anything mentally that you need to change when you're playing drums in the quartet as opposed to playing bassoon in the quartet? Like, do you
Um,
have to change gears at all up here?
uh, David's approach is actually, he said before, it's so natural. So the music is also very natural for me, but it's also so sophisticated, actually. Uh, for me, uh, he understands the bassoon really well as a composer because not every composer gives the credit bassoon deserves. And he uses bassoon is very clever way, very wise. And it's it's great for me to play his music with bassoon also, and also drums, because even I familiar with those old times of Middle Eastern music, but he's writing very sophisticated bass lines and also harmonies on it.
Mm.
So it's not that easy for me either, but it's so much fun and amazing music. Yeah, I really
Absolutely.
enjoy.
David, as we've talked about before, the quartets are different. And you alluded to it earlier. One of the quartets is made up of violin, bassoon, clarinet, and piano. And then the second quartet is a straight up traditional jazz quartet, bass, drums, piano, saxophone. You've sort of answered this, but did you have to change your composing process when you were composing for the two quartets? I'm thinking here, like, is there more improvisation in the straight up jazz quartet, and it's more rote for the clarinet violin quartet? How did that process work?
Yeah, well, you said it, it's quite different because the objectives are different. So
Mm,
in the case of the jazz quartet, I'm using the folk melodies and the rhythms. I'm organizing musical materials in those compositions to inspire the players to play as they feel comfortable playing. So in other words, I'm presenting more of the materials of the music that the players in the jazz quartet can be creative with So we co-compose something. Okay. In the classical quartet, it's very different. I'm trying to find different ways to take the original melody and the original rhythms, and I'm pre-building a story narrative for each. But I'm doing it in a way that I'm trying to acknowledge a long history of these wonderful instruments playing that music, and while acknowledging the tradition of, you know, the violin repertoire and the tradition of the bassoon repertoire and so on, I'm also trying to present it in a way that's fresh for the players without asking them to do things that are very bizarre on their instrument. And I think I can do that quite naturally just because my foundational materials as a musician are different. You know, I'm sort of a didactic type and a sort of hands-on learner type. So fundamentally as a composer, I'm self-taught. So I'm relying on my background of intuition, my ears, self-study, jazz, to sort of inform that, and those things inform my impulses in how to organize musical materials in a classical context. So yeah, I mean, to sum it up, the jazz quartet, they're taking my sketches and we're building with the sketches. And the classical quartet is more about refining the materials and deciding the narrative in advance, and to try and find ways of how each of the instruments can be the voice of this sort of ancient music, but hopefully in a sort of fresh and creative way.
The shows on Sunday night sound like they're going to be terrific. When I was preparing for the interview, the two words, I guess, that really popped in my mind were tonal colors. I mean, you've got these very diverse instruments, and you've got lots of palettes, you know, of tonal colors to draw from. Are there any specific moments in either of the quartets that make you go, wow, this is amazing? Like, this sounds fantastic. Serkan, maybe I'll start with you. Is there any one moment where you're just playing and you're just thinking, this is outstanding?
Yeah, just after I start to play with the group. Because the chamber music we played is not a regular order. There is a violin, clarinet, piano, and bassoon, and it's not a regular thing. It's not easy to sound good with that instruments. Usually they are wind quartets or string quartets or cantets, etc. But David, as I said before, use bassoon is so clever way. Bassoon can easily be understood as a funny instrument, or just like double bass or cello, but it has so much character on it. Actually, bassoon has so much character, and David knows every character of it. So it's, as a bassoonist, it's great to play David's music. Yeah.
And David, how about
he
you?
wrote beautiful solos on it. Yeah, I'm very, how can I say, going sentimental and emotional when I'm playing it.
Oh, that's great. David, how about you? Are there any specific moments where it's just the tonal colors are amazing?
Yeah, well, when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind was a solo that Serkan plays. There's a piece on both the jazz set and the classical set that comes from Turkey, Serkan's home country. And I've been obsessed with this melody for years. I don't know why, just something about it grabbed me the first time. And it's a type of melody I could just play over and over and over again. I've been trying to figure out why exactly. There's something in the organization of the melody and the rhythm which seems perfectly balanced to me, or something, or some sort of archetype of something. But anyways, given that I have, you know, an amazing Turkish musician playing this Turkish-inspired composition based on one of their well-known, well-loved melodies. I give him a solo in the middle of the piece, sort of up high in the bassoon range, which is such a beautiful and spooky area of the bassoon. Of course, we think of the opening of the Rite of Spring as an example of that spooky tone. You know, certainly Stravinsky must have been thinking about the color up there when he wrote that opening. So he plays this melody in that register, and it's just, I just never want it to end, you know, because it just sounds so beautiful, like with this particular type of bassoon sound, which is different than the sort of American, Canadian, North American bassoon sound. There's another kind of density in his tone, which is just so lovely and engaging. So I always look forward to that moment. I just don't want to tell Serkan which solo it is, just so he doesn't think about it when we play the concert, you know. But there's a moment in that piece, which the classical quartet is called Pale Crescent. The original, Serkan can correct my pronunciation, but the original folk melody it comes from, I think it has two titles. One is Zeynep and Zenebim. I've heard both names refer to the same folk melody.
Oh man, sounds great. David and Serkan, the show's on Sunday night at 6:30 and 8:30 at the Fort Garry Hotel. Sound like they're going to be just amazing. All the best. And thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. This has just been a lot of fun. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. May I say one quick thing about the shows? We actually decided because there's two concerts of 1 hour, but I actually decided for each concert, I'm going to put both groups. So it'll be half-hour jazz set, half-hour classical set, and then same thing for both shows. So rather than do one and one, I'm going to mix them, because I would really like the audiences to feel how contemporary jazz and contemporary classical music actually meet with the same type of audience. I feel like there's a common language there which is being ignored. So I'm hoping by blending them, audiences of both persuasions might find out that they actually get along. It's my hope, anyways.
That's amazing. Thanks again. For our Classic 107 listeners, if you go to classic107.com, I have provided a direct link to the Jazz Winnipeg page where you can purchase tickets and find out more about these two fantastic shows on Sunday. David and Serkan, thanks again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
It was great to be here.